You may spend your time thinking and worrying about your first couple of picks in your fantasy draft, but we know in the middle rounds, that's usually where you find your breakouts and your potential league winners. Who are those guys this year? We're about to tell you. First, a reminder, if you haven't checked us out at flockfantasy.com/endgame, this is the time you catch all of our preseason rankings, bonus articles and videos that you cannot find here on YouTube, plus so much more, and access to our draft domination course. That's right, a special video course where we teach you the ins and outs of how to draft, not just who to pick and which players we like. No, this is about the strategy and what to do on draft day so that you are prepared no matter what is thrown at you. Check it out at flockfantasy.com/endgame. But we are here to tell you some of the players we like and we're looking for over and over again in drafts, this time looking at the middle portion of the draft. So, Chris, who's the first player that you like?
Yeah, keep talking about Marquise Brown, and I'm going to keep talking about him. I was pretty much off the Cardinals' offense after Kyler Murray tore his ACL this whole offseason, but I'm starting to come around on him, especially Marquise Brown, because I do think we're going to see Kyler Murray a lot earlier than people think. Maybe not week one. Maybe he misses a month of the season, but I think he's going to be out there much sooner than people think. All this talk that they're going to, tank for Caleb and they're just going to sit him and not risk him. That is not what NFL teams do. As soon as Kyler Murray can play, he will play. Plus, Kyler Murray is going to want to play. So I think we're going to see Marquise Brown with Kyler Murray way more this season than people think. And if we do, Marquise Brown is going to be great because we saw it last year with Kyler Murray, how many targets he got, how good he was those first 5 weeks before his foot injury. Wide receiver 5 in that stretch. And that was without DeAndre Hopkins, who's gone, we know is gone. And Zach Ertz, he's coming off a major ACL injury. And unlike Kyler Murray, who's a quarterback, he's a 32-year-old tight end. He's probably not going to be out there. I mean, there are a ton of targets up for grabs here for Marquise Brown. And look, even if Kyler Murray misses a month, even if he misses 6 weeks, you don't think Marquise Brown can be serviceable with Colt McCoy or Clayton Tune just because of his target share? If he's getting double-digit targets, even if he's only catching half of them, he'll at least be startable as like a wide receiver 3 in PPR leagues. And then when Kyler Murray does come back and he's awesome, your team gets a big jolt. And he's still a guy going kind of in that 5th, 6th round range in most drafts. I think that's way too low. Had he played all last season and not gotten hurt, people would be drafting him so much higher than this right now. I don't understand it. I just think people think Kyler Murray isn't going to play this year. That's not how it's going to work. Kyler Murray will be out there, and when he is, Marquise Brown will smash. And even if Kyler Murray's not out there in the beginning, Marquise Brown will still be good enough. Draft him everywhere you can, because I think at least in the second half of the season, he's going to be an absolute monster.
Well, now let me give some airtime to Marquise Brown's former quarterback. Even though he doesn't have Hollywood, I think he'll be just fine. That's Lamar Jackson. Now, you may have heard if you watch our mock drafts, which we do every single week, multiple times a week, and you'll see it over and over again. For the most part, we're taking one of those stud quarterbacks, if possible, in those first few rounds. Now, where you say early to mid-round, the cutoff is, it's a little vague, depends on your league, but usually Lamar Jackson doesn't go in the first 3 or 4 rounds, right? Round 5, round 6, it just depends. I'm going to say probably he's a mid-round pick because he's not going in those first couple of rounds, and he's definitely not going as the first quarterback overall. Everyone's taking Mahomes first, taking Hurts first. Might see Burrow, Josh Allen go before him. So when you get to that tier drop where the quarterback talent becomes from elite to really good, but not necessarily elite for fantasy, I'm taking Lamar Jackson, and I want him on my teams. Now, we're going to talk a lot, maybe you could say too much about the Baltimore offense this preseason because that's how high we are on him. Look, Todd Monken has done a lot of good things in college. Some people will point to say, well, he hasn't done anything in the NFL. Okay, fine. Whether you think he's a genius or not, whether you think the play calling is going to be so different or not, that's not really necessarily the point. The point is, it's not the Greg Roman offense. It's not the slow, pound and ground and run the ball and then let Lamar kind of scramble and do his thing. They're going to pass the ball. And another thing that, Chris, you had pointed out not too long ago, it's the pace of play also. They're not just going to try to milk the clock and, play conservative. They're going to let him do his thing. They paid him to not just sit there and hand the ball off, right? He wants to pass the ball, and they brought in weapons, which was part of the deal. If he was going to stay in Baltimore and get that contract, he wanted weapons. Well, he got them. Exciting rookie in Zay Flowers, who could be the best rookie receiver this year. I'm high on him. Obviously, Odell Beckham, at least for this year or for a couple of games. But hey, that's an upgrade over what they had last year, isn't it? And then they still have one of the best tight ends there in Mark Andrews. This offense will clearly be better. And I know recency bias gets the best of us. You look at Lamar Jackson last year, obviously disappointing. Middle of the season, he gets hurt, doesn't play. And then the end of the season, he's still hurt so that, the contract talks continue. Whatever. It's over. He's in Baltimore. He's happy. He's paid. He's going to have a huge season. He's got the upside to be the overall QB1, and that usually helps you win games in fantasy. I'm taking him probably every chance I can once you get to the middle portion of the draft. All right, let's keep it going. Give another mid-round player that you love in fantasy.
Yeah, I've been talking a lot about J.K. Dobbins in this range, but there's some uncertainty with J.K. Dobbins right now. He's on the PUP list, but I don't think he's hurt. It might be a holdout. Who knows what's going on? Running backs are just crazy this year. I've been talking a lot about Rachaad White. I still really like Rachaad White, but let's talk about a guy I really haven't talked a lot about. I have a little bit, who I think is not really any risk associated with him as far as holding out, not being there, and no competition in the backfield. That is Cam Akers with the Rams. There is nobody else here. The only guy who was kind of a threat, Sony Michel, just retired. So who did they replace him with? Royce Freeman? Yeah, not worried about Royce Freeman. They drafted Zach Evans in like the 6th round. They have Kyron Williams from last year, who's a total plotter, not worried about him at all. Cam Akers is going to be the workhorse running back in this Rams offense. Sean McVay loves this guy. Even last year, when he was terrible coming back from that Achilles injury, Sean McVay just kept giving him the ball, 2 yards a carry, 1 yard a carry. But he did look pretty good down the stretch last year. It looked like he was getting back close to 100% health. I doubt we're ever going to see Cam Akers be the guy he could have been had he never torn his Achilles. But he's a good prospect. He's a good enough player. If he can get back to that 80-90% range of what he would have been, and we've seen guys like Deontay Foreman actually eventually get back kind of to that range off of Achilles, then he'll be good enough because it's a good offense. It's a dynamic offense. It's an offense that's going to give him lots of chances to score. Teams are going to be worried about the pass, not the run, so he's not going to face a lot of stacked boxes. And he's going to get the volume, and that's what you should be chasing in fantasy. He's a good enough player, combined with the volume, combined with the opportunity, based on where he's going. I think he's going to be a high upside every week, RB2, with potential for more.
I'm all about that take, and I guess I just didn't want to mention Cam Akers because it was too obvious, right? I'm a believer there. Now, let me tell you, though, another kind of later round running back. He still qualifies as a mid-round pick, I believe, but he's going too late, is Brian Robinson. Now, I understand why people don't believe in him necessarily because, number one, didn't catch a lot of passes last year. Number two, Washington, not the most exciting offense. And you know what? Even Sam Howell proves to be pretty good. It's still not going to be one of the top tier offenses. Let's just face it. It probably isn't. And number three, we don't really know what he's going to do because, limited time so far as a rookie. He's a little bit older. He's somebody who doesn't feel like he has that ton of upside that maybe some of these other rookie running backs or second-year running backs have. Well, here's why I am high on Robinson and higher than consensus for sure. Well, first of all, we're hearing that he's working on his pass catching. I know we hear this all the time. We've heard it before, whatever. But I believe it because we've seen it happen. And also, J.D. McKissic's gone. A lot of people jumping on saying, well, this is Antonio Gibson's time. Look, Antonio Gibson will still have a role. And I really don't have Gibson ranked that much lower than Robinson. But I think Robinson also does inherit some of those targets. Gibson can't be on the field for every time they're going to dump the ball off to the running back. And if Robinson's the early down back, there will be times where Howell just has to look his way. I feel like, the pass catching floor, instead of basically being nothing like it was last year, right? He caught, 9 passes, I think. He's going to get at least 25 to 30. There's room for more there if he proves capable. So I'd say that argument I'm kind of squashing. And then there's the fact that we did not see anything close to the real Brian Robinson. Obviously, what happened last year coming off a gunshot wound. It's amazing that he even came back as soon as he did, and we saw how much better he was in the second half of the season. Averaged closer to 4.5 yards per carry, as opposed to the first few games where it was not even 4 yards per carry. It speaks for itself why that happened. Now we're going to see him fully healthy after an offseason and working as number one back during training camp. And then there's the fact that I just think this Washington offense is going to lean on him and the running game a little bit more, partly to protect Sam Howell, partly because, you know what, their defense is good enough. They don't have to sit back and pass the ball a lot. If Robinson gets the kind of carries and the kind of volume we saw late last year, he's going to be pretty close to a workhorse. The only thing is, like I said, that receiving role he's sharing with Gibson. But man, you look at the volume that he's going to get compared to a lot of these other mid-round running backs, he really should be a lot higher. So this is a guy I think has the upside of some of these guys we talk about, like Dameon Pierce, maybe even Cam Akers, who isn't really a huge receiving back either, and yet he's available 2 rounds later, and I don't understand it. All right, who else are you targeting in the middle portion of your draft that you feel is just going way underrated?
Yeah, you started with a quarterback. I'm going to end with a quarterback, and that is Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson, one of the best values in all of fantasy drafts, but certainly one of the best values at quarterback. This is a guy back in Houston. Other than his rookie year where he tore his ACL, he was a top 5 fantasy QB every single year. And then last year, he comes back late in the season off a suspension with all the off-the-field stuff on a new team with a totally new staff, totally new receivers. And people are like, oh, he wasn't very good, so I guess he's just not very good anymore. Like, what? That's not how this works. He's going to be so much better this year. He has a full offseason, a full training camp with these coaches to learn the system, learn the wide receivers, and they've upgraded this wide receiver room. They went out, traded for Elijah Moore. They drafted Cedric Tillman. They still have Amari Cooper. They still have Donovan Peoples-Jones. They have David Njoku. He has so many weapons, more weapons than he ever had in Houston. I think we see Deshaun Watson bounce back in a big way this year. I don't even think a top 5 QB finish is out of the question, but I certainly think top 10 well within reason. So if you miss out on one of those early elite QBs and you're waiting, I will happily grab Deshaun Watson in this range as an every week QB1. I think he'll be just fine. And he could honestly be much better than just fine. He could be great this year in fantasy. So if you're missing out, wait a little bit and get Deshaun Watson.
If Watson's going to have the kind of year that you think he will, and again, I'm on board with that as well, because I think one of his main weapons is going to also have a big year. That's Elijah Moore. Now, Amari Cooper is clearly the one there. I got no issue with that, and that's why I'm taking him if he's available in round 3 as a wide receiver 1. But I'm all over Elijah Moore at this discounted ADP where he's at right now until people start to come around and see how good he actually is. You know, the problem was never him, at least not in terms of actual ability and football stuff, right? He's got great numbers when he's on the field and actually targeted. His reception perception shows he is as good, if not better, of a route runner than people thought. He just did not have anybody capable and willing to throw him the ball. You already know this. If you're a Jets fan, you know this. All right, now he's going to the best quarterback he's ever had in his couple years in the NFL, and that's Deshaun Watson, right? You don't need to justify why Moore could have his best season yet. He's a good receiver. He's going to be on a team that now is going to pass the ball a lot more. Got an elite quarterback. And really, when you talk about target competition, yeah, he's the number 2 behind Amari Cooper. But they added him because there was a need. Because the other guys they have there are good but not great. Donovan Peoples-Jones, fine. He's good. He's efficient. But more of a field stretcher, not a clear Z receiver. And Elijah Moore, if he's occupying the slot, he's somebody who's going to get a lot of those underneath targets. I mean, this is going to be a steal in fantasy drafts when you can get him as your wide receiver 3. Those are our favorite targets in the middle rounds of drafts. Who should be your top target in every round? Well, got you covered. Check this video out.